You're listening to the Stay Sore podcast, where we talk about physical, financial, and emotional strength. Why stay sore? Because nothing good comes easy. Here's your host, Bo Skitsko.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Stay Sore podcast. I'm your host, Bo Skitsko, and in today's episode, we're talking about leadership. I'm very, very excited to have with me here today, Julius Ciaccia. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah. And we're talking about leadership today, and right now you're retired, correct?
Correct, but I'm still working on a consulting basis with a few firms.
Understand. But you used to be the CEO of more than just one big companies, correct?
Right. I was director of utilities and commissioner of water for the city of Cleveland, running their regional water system, which served over 70 communities here in the Northeast Ohio area. Over 1 million people served. Had a workforce of about 1,700 people, and over $200 million operating budget. Wow. Another $100 million in capital programs, and then from there I went over to the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, which is a regional sewer utility serving 60 communities. Again, a $200 million operating budget, another $200 million in capital projects, and again, serving 1 million people. So wow, it's been quite a career. It was spanned over 40 years. When I was with the city, I worked under 5 different mayors. Okay. And then of course at the sewer district, it was a different governance model there. We had a 7-member board that I reported to a CEO. And then when I retired from there, I was on the board for 3 years. And currently, as I said, I'm working, doing some consulting work for 3 different firms, and I'm also sitting on 4 non-for-profit boards.
So this sounds like you have a lot of experience, and you're the right person to talk about leadership. How many people did you have overall working underneath you as employees? Yeah,
well, at the city of Cleveland, I had 1,700 employees, and then when I was at the sewer district, I had 850 employees. So it was quite a few employees, obviously different levels of employment and management throughout the ranks.
I understand. Okay, so you're most definitely the right person to talk about leadership. I'm sure our listeners are interested in that, but me personally as well, because as you know, I'm running a small business, and I want to pick your brain. I want to learn some things from you. And I love writing things down so I don't forget anything. I have like a really messy list of things I want to ask you. I just keep writing and making notes here so I don't forget anything. So if I want to start right away with the really, really rough question. You think you're a good leader?
Well, we had pretty good success at the organizations I was at. So yes, of course, I think I did a pretty good job leading those organizations. I mean, they were government-based organizations with a lot of politics involved in them. A lot of diversity in the type of workforce that we had. So there was a lot of moving parts that I was able to successfully manage and to work through 5 different mayors.
Oh, yeah.
So
you have been doing this for a long time, correct?
That's right, 40 years, right.
Wow. Okay. What's the hardest part about being a leader and having so many people work for you?
It's managing the people. You think about, whether it's 5 people or 2,000 people. I mean, there's a diversity in how they view things and how they live their lives, and the experiences they're going through, and and everything. So you have to be responsive to them. You have to keep the team together, and and there's going to be challenges. I mean, you're going to have divisive people in the organization. You're going to have the company people in the organization, and productive and non-productive, and all various different types of issues that come along with just managing people.
Different belief systems.
And yeah, right. And then there's the customers. I mean, there are our people as well.
I understand.
So it's all about people.
Moving parts, right?
Right.
Logistics and all the moving parts getting together. The hardest topic, it seems like, for CEOs is firing people. How many people did you have to fire over your experience?
Oh, there's quite a few, and that's probably, it is a very difficult. I mean, if you're an empathetic person, and you feel what some of these people have to go through in their daily lives and stuff like that, it could be very difficult. And I think when I was young, when I first started out, it was obviously it was a lot more difficult. Through experience, you learn how to deal with firing in more humane ways. I mean, there are those people, by the way, that just really test your leadership and give you the opportunity to show everybody else what happens when somebody's not part of the team. And so those are a little easier to deal with, but most often these are real human beings. They're having real issues, and they have to be let go. And now, fortunately, I only had a couple experiences where we had layoffs.
Okay.
But those would be very difficult as well, because there some people who, but for no fault of their own, are having to be let go. But you have to be able to build up the experience and the fortitude to do what you have to do to keep the company alive for everybody else.
I understand. You mentioned being empathetic. Does being empathetic make you a better leader or a worse leader?
No, absolutely better. Everybody's watching you. I mean, they're watching. I mean, I've had even bosses that weren't so empathetic, and they basically ruled through fear, and that's short-lived leadership. I mean, you just not, because everybody's watching you, and they're going to, in their own little ways, they're going to turn on you within the organization. And so you're going to rot from within. So, so showing empathy and is a strength.
So it's definitely a strength.
Being empathetic and showing the empathy.
But doesn't that make it harder on you as a person when you lead, when you're empathetic?
No. I mean, because again, you know what you have to have the confidence and know what you need to do to keep the organization moving forward.
Okay.
And sometimes you have to just make them tough decisions. Yes, I'm empathetic to this employee's issues that they're having personally, but from a work standpoint, it is affecting everybody else, and a decision has to be made. Understood.
So you mentioned empathetic. What are other 2 or 3 qualities that a great leader should have, in your opinion?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is, and this is from a leadership standpoint, but also even with some of the employees and some of the managers that I've had to manage, is self-awareness.
Okay.
Self-awareness is huge. You have to be aware of your own shortcomings and how you're perceived, and how and how you form your opinions of other people and situations. And so self-awareness, the hardest people to manage are those that lack self-awareness. And so if I have, and I've had people underneath me as managers that lacked self-awareness, and that was then tough for them to lead through in the organization, and required me to have to make some changes with them. But so self-awareness is really, really huge. Confidence is huge.
So when you say self-awareness, you mean knowing your strengths and weaknesses?
Knowing your own strengths and weaknesses, knowing how you're perceived and how you're coming across.
How do you find out how people see you?
Well, you got to communicate with them, and you got to make them feel at ease that they can express their own selves. I mean, I've had, like I walk into meetings and I would mostly listen.
Okay.
Unless I really had something really important I had to get out. You know, I was a listener, and I would get all their views and make them feel comfortable that they can express themselves. And there's just so many ways that a manager, if you're strong within your organization, will get feedback on yourself. Whether it's directly or back channels or whatever, you're going to get feedback.
Usually it's back channels.
If your employee, if you got a lot of leaks within your organization, a lot of information is leaking out that shouldn't be getting out, whether it's leaking out in other parts of the organization or leaking out externally, you know you have a problem with confidence from your employees.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So empathy, self-awareness, confidence, anything else?
Yeah. And as I said, just being open, and you know, I always tried to be really open with the people that work with me.
What about things that a leader should most definitely not do or have, qualities a leader should get rid of as fast as possible, in your opinion?
Well, yeah, I mean, consistency. You know, people that are inconsistent because they're well, you know, emotions get the best of them. Is not a good thing. You know, people are looking for a consistent leader. We know where this person is generally coming from. There'll be surprises, of course. But generally, there's a consistency that they learn how to deal with you, you know, and like I said, you know, I think that we've put a lot of attention on IQ, intelligence quotient, but emotional quotient, you know, EQ,
being emotionally intelligent,
is way more important. IQ without EQ is a zero.
I understand.
And so, you know, being emotionally stable for the organization, and, you know, and you're going to have, you know, I've had crises that have come up during my career. Whether it was at 2003, we had the total electrical blackout, which knocked out all of our water pumps, and we couldn't pump pump water out to customers.
So how many people were affected by that?
Hundreds of thousands of people, were affected for hours. And we didn't know when it was going to end. And so, you know, I had to take leadership in that situation and not only plan for how we're going to manage the situation there, but how we're going to start planning for the recovery when the power comes back, and, you know, let everybody do their job while I take all the political or external issues that are cropping up from it. So there's going to be crises, and if you're not emotionally set for these type of things, you know, then you're going to lose your team from a leadership standpoint, because they have to do their job during a crisis.
How do you learn emotional intelligence? Is that a time thing? Is that an experience thing? How do you learn that?
I think it's mostly experience, you know, and a lot of it's within the person too. And again, that comes back to self-awareness. I mean, how do you mold yourself to be able to deal with the emotional issues that are coming up? And, you know, in a crisis, the biggest example of the type of emotional issue. I mean, it could be that, or it could be an operational crisis. It could be a management crisis, you know, or it could be even something where some people are doing something criminal within the organization.
Did you ever have that happen?
Yes, I have, both internally in the organization and externally among some of the vendors that we've had. So it's you know, these are the times that you have to really pull all your personal resources together to keep your leadership intact.
So I think this is something that people like to listen most. Without mentioning any names or any concrete things, would you be able to share any crisis or legal crisis stories? Anything interesting that you had to go through? Sure.
Yeah, I had a group of I had an employee who was running a scam out of our procurement department, and was basically working with some contractors and basically stealing money from the organization, and he was getting bribes. At the same time, I had some contractors that had a scam going where they were bribing public officials.
Wow.
Okay, and those two things were going on at the same time. The one with the procurement scandal involved a number of employees within, and obviously I didn't know at the time the federal government started investigating that. I didn't know what it was all about.
Okay.
So I had to scramble and try to find out, okay, well, what was going on here, and I had to tried to get in front of the situation before it hit into the public realm. And so I was able to learn everything that was going on before it became public. I was able to fire the perpetrators before it became public, so that when it did become public, they were all former employees. They were not employees.
I understand. So you had to be a step ahead.
So it was a scramble. But at the same time, there was this other investigation that was going on among some large consulting firms that were paying off public officials not related necessarily to my organization, but somehow got me dragged into it personally. And so I had to find out what that was all about at the same time and get ahead of that situation, which I was able to do and come out of that clean. But both these things were going on at the same time. And I think the key thing with this whole thing is that, I never let the organization, I had to do this without the organization knowing how much stress I was under.
Okay.
Or how much, or what was really going on. I had to keep everybody calm during the whole thing. So there was a multifaceted type of emotional roller coaster.
Okay, so you have to keep your cool. You have to stay confident,
right,
and not show any signs of, let's say, weakness or emotion.
That's right.
Okay,
right. Yeah,
okay. That's probably pretty challenging, I would assume.
It was extremely challenging. Probably the most challenging moments of my life. That lasted for a couple of years.
Wow.
I mean, it wasn't just like a week. This went on for a couple of years because if you find out what the federal government moves very slowly when they're investigating, which is not a bad thing, because it gives a person like myself time to gather myself and react for the organization's standpoint.
So how do you not let these things, and I'm assuming you had a lot of these stories, how do you let these things not affect you when you come home? How do you separate work, stress, and then home life?
Well, I think that's kind of a personal trait. Standpoint. I tend to be, I don't dwell on things.
How do you teach me? I need that.
I don't know. I mean, I think this is something, I think I was just born with some sort of attention deficit disorder or whatever, because it's like, I can be thinking of something now, and in 5 minutes I'll be thinking about something else. And so again, that was a self-awareness thing for me. And so I was able to change my thinking over that. I mean, there's so many things we have going on, right? I mean, we can certainly change our own direction. It's a self-control issue. Definitely. Change our direction as to what we're thinking. This thinking right now, I'm dwelling on it too much. Now we're getting into the counterproductive realm. So I'm going to start thinking about another issue. That I have. It's they're all. It's like this puzzle is got me stymied right now. I'm gonna put that down and work on this puzzle.
I understand. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I don't know how to do it. And it seems like you think it's a thing that you have within, right?
Yeah, it's somewhat within, but also it's I had gotten to the level, like when that incident came up, I was at the level I was very experienced.
I understand.
At that point in time. I had tried out many things personally in managing myself.
Yes.
To manage the organization. So I knew what worked.
Okay, I understand. Do you think as a leader you learn from mistakes or successes more?
Well, I think mistakes are pretty strong.
Strong teachers?
Strong teachers. I mean, I used to say that, I had people that I learned from. Mm-hmm. And I probably learned more of what not to do from some of these people than what to do.
Okay.
Because you saw their failures. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you'll have your own, and those stick with you. That didn't work, so I had to try something else. But being flexible and agile, mm-hmm. and knowing this is going down the wrong path and changing gear.
So being able to pivot.
Yes, pivoting is important. But okay. Definitely, fortunately in my career, your mistakes have been not too bad. Mm-hmm. We were talking about the crises of the corruption issues that I had to deal with. Well, no, I had to sit back after those were behind me and said, what did I do? What should I have known? And what did I do wrong? Mm-hmm. That got me into that. So it wasn't like blaming everybody else.
Okay.
All the people that were the perpetrators, they were certainly to blame and they got their punishment. But what did I do?
I understand.
To allow this to occur? Or what didn't I do?
I understand. So as a leader, as a leader or as a good leader, you don't think, why did these people do wrong? But you rather think, how did I let that happen?
Exactly.
I understand.
And obviously, the old saying that the buck stops here is couldn't be any more important for a leader.
Okay. So when you were talking about your crises and you said, I will deal with the political stuff of it, and I let my employees do their work. So let's talk about delegation. I think as a leader, mm-hmm. It's sometimes really hard to find that balance between mm-hmm. controlling, micromanaging, macromanaging, delegating work so things get done, mm-hmm. because you can't do all of it. Would you have any advice? Because especially when small business owners start, they have to do everything. How do you slowly let go and let people do their work and not spend time on things that can get done without you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I haven't run big organizations. I mean, you virtually had to delegate. I mean, you just couldn't possibly do everything. But it was hard at first because, you want to do everything, especially things that you're interested mm-hmm. in. I mean, we'll all find our within the organization. Well, like the engineers, if I was an engineer, which I'm not, mm-hmm. and I was running that organization, I'd probably be all into the engineering department. So at the beginning, it's kind of difficult. And then when you learn that over time, you just learn that you just can't do it all. I mean, if you want to be successful.
I understand.
Let's face it. I mean,
you have to duplicate yourself to get somewhere, correct?
Right. And then after a while, it's through experience, it just becomes easier and easier. And then building up a trust factor in the people that you have working with you.
Is there like a step-by-step kind of way to delegate more and more and learn if that person is able to do that work that was delegated or not?
Sure, certainly. I mean, you watch their successes and failures, and mm-hmm. And that adds to your confidence in them or non-confidence in them. And then obviously, if it's non-confidence, then a change has to be made. And again, you can't let that fester. I mean, it has to be done fairly quickly, just for the confidence of the overall organization. And in the case of small businesses or even large businesses, and even governmental businesses, the finances and what it takes to keep the business going.
Okay. I have a slightly different question as for leadership. Do you build rather personal relationships or professional relationships? Because one can be more dangerous than the other one, but one can also get you more loyalty. So what's the balance?
Well, it's predominantly professional relationship. I mean, there are some relationships within organizations that become professional plus, let's call it. Okay. I mean, it's never really a personal.
So you want to stay away from building
personal relationships are at home.
Okay.
And with the friends. I mean, now it's not to say that so that there isn't a certain level of healthy social activity that goes on that appears to be personal relationships, but it really isn't.
Okay.
I told people these are my work associates.
Okay.
You know, they're really not friends, because once we cross that friendship line, then it gets very difficult to manage.
I understand.
So I was always mindful of, you know, there were people that were closer to me than others, but it was never personal.
Never crossing that line.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So
would you like make a point that when you are in a leadership position that personal relationships could be dangerous?
They can be.
Okay.
They can be, absolutely. It's tough to manage somebody that that you have a personal feelings about of any kind. I'm not talking about male, female. I'm talking about of any kind.
Even friendships, correct?
Right. Yeah,
okay, I understand. Okay, good to know. Good to know. I think a lot of business owners or leaders know that, but still sometimes get into that dangerous area of crossing that line.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's one of those things you just have to keep in your mind.
I understand.
You know, when you're self-assessing every day, you know, where is this going? How is this going? How is this perceived? You know, and you know, you can't, if you're in a large organization like mine, you cannot avoid people having perceptions.
Yes.
Okay. They're going to be out there, but you don't need to feed.
I understand
those perceptions.
I understand. So before we did this interview today, I asked on my social media what people would like to hear if I would interview a CEO. And we had some questions I wanted to ask you, some of them, and some of them I personally wanted to ask you as well. So let's start with the first one. Ethics during leadership, ethics, and also like what drives your decisions, the balance sheet of the company, the people, your personal beliefs and ethics system. Like, would you be able to say something about that?
Well, ethics is extremely important, and we talked a little bit about the crisis of criminal investigation stuff, and you could not, you know, as a leader, you couldn't survive something like that unless people thought you were of a you had high ethical standards. So I mean, you know, people, you know, there could be a lot of rumors out there about, well, this, that, there, but you gave people no reason to believe that you would ever have a lapse in ethics to be a part of that. So that's why ethics are so important. Now, obviously, the financial position of the company is extremely important. I mean, I've you know, even though we were government entities and, quite frankly, monopolies, I always told my predecessors and both successors in both of my organizations that watching the finances is the most important thing you can do. No money, no business. Okay. And so you want to keep this business going, we had to be financially healthy. So I guess, you know, I can't put one really over the other. They're both important to each other. But yeah, I obviously I put the premium on the ethics.
So there's this dilemma of, from what I understand, to rephrase what you just said, is having a high level of ethics, personal ethics as a CEO or so leader, gets the loyalty of the employees higher, correct?
That's correct. And the customers that you're dealing with.
But on the flip side, if the balance sheet is doing poor, you run into the problem of maybe having to fire people or lay off people. So that becomes an ethical issue as well. So you have to balance those two.
You have to balance them, but the ethics is, on top.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know.
What's the most important? Because, without the ethics, your company is going to be at risk.
I understand. I'm glad you said that. Right. So ethics come first, balance sheet second. How much hands-on time do you need to spend when delegating? Do you have to be a lot involved, not a lot involved? How much training do you have to do for the people underneath you so they can teach the people underneath them? How much hands-on time do you have for you to feel involved and not distanced?
No, really. I mean, I didn't. For me, it wasn't that time consuming at all.
Okay.
I had my direct reports, and that's who I had to evaluate. It was probably 8 direct reports in each organization I was at that I had to manage, and I held them accountable, and then pushed that down to them to delegate down. And of course, they had to meet a certain standard that. My standard for management. Again, if I had one, for instance, I had one manager who just lacked self-awareness and was, rankling the employees underneath that person, and obviously that had to be changed.
How do you change that?
Well, you have to. We go through an evaluation system. I mean, you have to. See, you have to have face-to-face with these people, and you have to let them know how you feel and what you're seeing, and give them an opportunity to correct. Okay, so themselves.
You give them opportunities to correct, or do you tell them how to correct it?
No, you give them opportunities.
Let them prove themselves?
Right, let them prove. Tell them where I think the shortcomings are. Why are we having so much turnover of employees in this organization? Why are people always wanting to transfer out of your operation? Okay, or why am I hearing so many complaints from employees in this organization, in your part of our organization? And then we discuss what goals and what opportunities are to turn it around, and then we see how they do, and hopefully most of the time they were successfully turned it around. Sometimes not so much.
I understand. In a situation like that, with that particular person, or with similar situations, do you believe rather in positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement?
Positive.
Positive.
Mostly, yeah. Okay. I never liked when somebody was reduced to tears in my office.
Okay.
So positive was always better, because I wanted I wanted the person to succeed.
Okay.
Now, in honesty, there were times when you just knew it was kind of a lost cause.
And you still put the time in, still give it a chance?
Well, you still have to put the time in, because in our world here, it's litigation is can be just around the corner.
Yes.
And so you have to put the time in and do the right things in order to get to where you're going to have to go. So there's a certain level of patience that has to be employed.
I understand. On leadership, is there any sources or books besides the book I wrote and published? Are there any books you would recommend for people to become better leaders?
Yeah, I've not been a book reader.
Okay.
So my whole life I've not been a book reader. So no, I mean, I just basically went on my experiences and my internal thought process and what has worked for me over time. Okay. That was kind of a shortcoming early on in my career, because I didn't go into it with any particular I started at 28 years old.
Wow.
And so I went in as a complete knucklehead, like anybody else at 28 would be, and I had to learn from hard knocks.
Okay.
Okay. The employees taught me real quick as to what was good and what was not good. So, I didn't have any real books or any, papers that I read on management that were going to get me into deep thought. Now, of course, I went to college and, took the business courses and, and we had business law and we had ethics classes on business and stuff like that, which I actually retained more than I thought I did.
Okay.
That I was able to apply.
Okay, this brings up a really interesting question for me personally even. I really need an honest answer from you. Do you think school prepared you for that, or do you think real life experience and all the, like you said, the hard knocks prepared you more?
Yeah, school prepared me more than I thought. Okay, but it wasn't overwhelming for sure.
Okay.
All right. It was little things here and there that I was able during being in practice of management that I was able to think back to. Oh yeah, I did learn.
Okay.
I did learn that from school. There was more hard knocks than anything else. When I first got in there at 28 years old and got thrust into the highest level of management, it was just some revolting by some of the employees. Taught me, well, that seems to be going all wrong. I think I'm gonna have to change that. And so that's where I got most of my learning. Okay.
I don't want to make this interview too long, and if the listeners or the viewers have more questions for Julius, please leave a comment or contact me at boskitsko@gmail.com. We can sit down and talk more in depth about these things. But before we finish, do you have any last words of wisdom as far as career growth, personal life, anything you like, biggest standout lesson you have learned throughout your career, your personal life in general, anything you would like to share, a big lesson that you discovered for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I know there's a lot of buzz around this word diversity.
Okay.
And, diversity is not just a black, white, brown, white, female, male. I mean, it's just embracing diversity of the workforce that you're dealing with and the customers that you have, and really trying to understand, where everyone is coming from and how different everyone is, because you can't, one size is not going to fit all for dealing with people, whether it's internal or external. Okay. And so that's where my listening rather than talking all the time comes in, and trying to sit there and actually analyze individuals as you're communicating with them.
So this brings up a different question. Do you treat everyone equally, or since everyone is diverse, you treat everyone differently?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's pretty much by treating them differently, it's almost equle. Because they.
Good comeback.
My workforces have been very diverse. Black and white. I mean, at Cleveland Water was 50-50 white and black, and then I had you had Arabic employees, and you had all kinds of different employees. Same thing, male, female, and then and there's just so many different things, as I said, outside of the traditional diversity issues of family life and what have you. So no, I mean it's you treat everybody as equal as you can. Okay. Now again, there are employees that are or people or customers even that are just so contentious and so negative that you can't treat them.
I understand.
The same. I mean, and so you have to deal with.
Julius, thank you so much for spending your time with me, with us, answering those questions. I'm sure I forgot a few, and I will probably have to come back and dig even deeper and pick your brain and learn from you. Thank you so much for your time. Guys, again, if you have questions, let me know. We can do a part 2 and dig deeper. I hope you got something out of it. Thank you so much for your time, and stay sore. I'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.